In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to play around with the subnational gender inequality index that was created for Vietnam and the associated web layers that we've created for the web mapping application. We're right now looking at the web mapping application that's embedded in the story or journal map that we made using Esri products. And in this story builder, we have a lot more information on how to build UNDP's gender inequality index and then how to adapt that index to create the subnational gender inequality indices for both Cambodia and Vietnam. But right now, we're only going to be looking at the Vietnam layers. So when we first enter the web mapping application, we know a few things about it. So here we're focused on Vietnam, and we can use the basic zoom tools to zoom into different areas to get a better idea of what's going on. Can zoom back out, and we can use the home screen, which is really just, it has a default home location that'll bring you back to in case you zoom in too far or zoom out too far. So down here we have various widgets that you can use within this web mapping application. The first one here is really important. It's the legend, and the legend tells you what your layers are indicating. So here we have the GII and the various scores that go along with it, from lowest to highest in different colors. We have Vietnam provinces. This is just an outline of Vietnam with the labels turned on, so you can see where you're actually looking at. And the only other layer that's turned on right now is this percentage of female managers and business owners. But we have many more layers already preloaded for you in this web mapping application. And you can find them all here in the layer list. So here are all the layers that we have created for Vietnam. And you can turn them on and off in here. You can actually turn them all on if you wanted to look at them. And that will be reflected right in your legend over here. And you can actually compare layers using another tool that we have in here. So for now, I'm just going to turn all my layers off, and I'm going to turn on the GII and adolescent fertility. You should also note that whatever is on top in the layer list is going to show up on top of the map screen. So this is the topmost layer that's turned on, the gender inequality index. So that's all we're gonna see, as opposed to if the adolescent fertility rate was on above net enrollment, we would only see adolescent fertility rate. So let's turn on the GII again and adolescent fertility rate, and we'll come back to that in a second. You can exit out of these and it will not permanently make them disappear. You can always bring them back up by selecting the widget again, and you can move them around the screen like I've been doing. So another really cool feature about this web mapping application is that you can add data from other ArcGIS Online sources. So either from sources within your organization or stuff that's preloaded by ESRI. So I could search for different layers. Say I had forgotten to load something onto my mapping application that I wanted to look at. I could find it here. I could look for roads, I could look for hospital locations, and add all of those to map flooding incidences, areas where there's high drought. I could even add one from another country. So I could add something from Cambodia and would automatically load it into the map. And this is just a temporary loading. It does not permanently save it to the layer list that we've preloaded for this map. That has to be changed on the back end. So this is anything that you load is temporary and can only be seen in the session that you're in. So I can also take this one back off because I don't want to see it again. It should disappear in a second. Oops, actually loaded a bunch of layers. So let's take those off. I think there's one, must be one more. Okay, great, it's gone. The next most interesting tool that we have on here is the swiping tool, and this is how you are able to compare various layers. So when I turn the swiping tool on, this little widget comes up, and I should be able to scroll back and forth between two layers. I'm going to turn both of the layers on. That just made it disappear. There it is. Sorry about that. Okay, so I just have the gender inequality index as the swiping layer because it's on top. That's the one that I want to swipe back and forth. So it basically is saying whatever you want to swipe, basically wipe away, that's the layer that you should have turned on, and it's the one that's on top so that we know that we can swipe it. So GII then disappears, and we can look at areas of, we can go back to our legend so we can get a little bit more context. We can look at areas that have a high gender inequality index and see if they overlap with areas that have a high adolescent birth rate. And actually we see down here that those two areas do correspond, as well as up here in the northern region of the country. All right, and you simply turn the swipe tool off by clicking it again. And the last widget that we have over here is the chart function. So we've preloaded all the bar charts for every single layer that you're going to see here. And you can gain a little bit more information about the layer comparing the values by clicking on a chart. So let's click on the Gender Inequality Index. We don't need to use a spatial filter, so we just hit Apply. It might take a little while to load because there are many regions that we have to look up within Vietnam. Okay, so here is our chart. And you'll see that every time you highlight your cursor over one of the bars, it will highlight where that region is on the screen. And it'll also zoom you in if you double click on it. So let's go back to our home. We can see here, and it also gives us the number. So this region had a GII score of 0.270. And we can compare areas of high and low. We can view more areas by scrolling up within it. This allows you to see kind of the range. So you can look at really high regions as opposed to really low regions. And if this is really hard for you to read, you can also hit this enlarge button, and it'll actually give you an enlarged version of your chart. When you look at the web application that just has these layers, you'll probably be able to look at both of these in tandem. But when you're viewing this web application through our map journal, it's a little bit hard to see because we can only scroll it out a little bit. And those are all the features that we've added to your web mapping application. That concludes this lesson, and I hope you've learned a lot.